We just made $50,000 wholesaling vacant land in West Dallas. But this deal took us 312 days. That's right, about 10 months from contract to closing on this deal. I mean, it was a headache, but there are a lot of things to be learned from this deal. Let's talk about it. Now, this lead came from our radio ad, and in my radio ad, I specifically mentioned that we specialize in buying inherited properties. So this lead call, she let me know that this land was left to her and her siblings after their mother passed. Now, there were about 9 siblings in total. 4 of those siblings had passed away. And so there were 5 still living, and then the other 4 had kids. So there was a total of 14 heirs that had to sign for this property. And now you can kind of understand why it almost took us a year to get this to the finish line. Now, 2 heirs for this property had went on and tried to sell this land without including all of the other heirs about a year prior to this seller reaching out to us, okay? Now, that deal actually went through. Those 2 heirs got paid. The buyer purchased the land. Now, what happened was there was a church member or something who worked with the brokerage who worked with the buyer who ended up buying this land and said, hey, I know this family, and threw the red flag because one of the heirs that she knew was not part of the sale. So she actually threw the red flag, blew the whistle. It ended up going back to title, and they reversed the transaction. And so the buyer was able to get his money back, due to title insurance, which is good for him. And there's a reason that you always want to get title insurance if you are a buyer for property, all right? Remember that. But the buyer was able to get his money back, but now the insurance company had to recoup their money, and the only way for them to get their money back is to get it directly from the sellers. Of course, these sellers had already spent the money. I mean, they falsified the sale of a property. Of course, they weren't holding on to the money. They spent it as soon as they got it. But that's another story. It has nothing to do with me. But they were actually, they actually had charges pressed against them to where they had to return that money within a year or so's time. And I don't know if they ended up doing that. But I bring that up because those 2 heirs who falsely and illegally sold this property, when the transaction was reversed, they were actually listed on the deed as to not receive proceeds if the property was to be sold again. And so initially that was a big issue because one of those heirs was not willing to agree to resell the property. I'm assuming because she wanted more money for the sale or wanted all of it to herself, but we ended up finding out that they were going to be excluded from the next sale of the property because they falsely sold it the first time. So that actually worked in our favor. And if you ever go through that, now you know if some heirs to a property falsely sell a property and it has to be reversed, those heirs will be excluded from the sale when it is done properly. With all that being said, you can imagine there was a lot of family tension going on, okay? Because one side of the family was saying this, the other side of the family was saying that. Of course, the guilty heirs who illegally tried to sell the property were putting bad information in some of the other heirs' ears, saying, hey, don't work with this family member to get this property sold. She's lying to y'all. She's not doing this right. She's not telling y'all how much money she's getting. And then it was actually revealed that they illegally sold the property. I had to convey that message to the family, say, hey, I know so-and-so is telling you not to sell and that you shouldn't sign and that you shouldn't work with us, but here's the documents to show that they illegally sold this property and wasn't even going to include you. So once we kind of peeled that layer back and exposed that to the family, then they were all with working with us to get this deal done. So sometimes you got to step in and be a mediator between family members and say, hey, these are the facts. This is what's in black and white. Put it in front of them and then give them the opportunity to make their mind up. And that's what happened in this case. So it took us a couple months just to reach out and connect to all of the heirs involved, explain to them the full scope of the situation, provide them with proof of what we were saying was true, and get them to understand how the process would move forward from here and that we were doing everything legally and by the books. Again, this was vacant land. It was in the West Dallas, Trinity Groves area, zip code 75212. too. If you're doing real estate in Dallas, Texas, you know exactly where that is. You know that's a hot area. And we got this deal locked up for only $60,000. That's right. We were able to get this land for $60,000, right at about the tax value. And like I said, with so many heirs being involved, another family member illegally trying to sell the property before they contacted us, the family was just ready to go. They were ready to get this done, and they wanted to make sure that they could all walk away with some cash. So they never really haggled us on the price, all right? They just wanted to make sure that we were honest buyers and that we were gonna, do right by them and do this process correctly the second time and make sure that everybody was included and everybody got paid that had ownership interest in the property. When I threw out that $60,000, it was a go. With absolutely no time at all, we were able to turn right around and find a buyer for this lot at $110,000 cash, leaving us the $50,000 assignment in the middle. On top of getting all the family members on board, there were also 5 affidavit of heirships that had to be completed. That took some time because if you know about affidavit of heirships, then you have to supply a death certificate to go along with every affidavit. And so there was some work getting the death certificates, finding out when these people died, where they died, and gathering all of that information. So between getting the heirs together, doing the affidavit of heirships, going out and gathering all of the death certificates, that's what took us so long. About 10 months to get this deal done. A lot of footwork, a lot of Ubers here and there, going to a lot of counties to pull death certificates, a lot of Ancestry.com research to find marriage dates and divorce dates and birth dates. There was a lot of background work that had to be done on this deal, but all we were looking at was the $50,000 assignment fee, all right? We knew it was at the end of the finish line. We couldn't see the finish line, but we just kept on taking steps every single day to get us closer to that assignment fee. And ultimately, we were able to get it done. This was one of those deals where there's a lot of trust building involved, and you have to be very cautious of the things you say and the things you do because there are so many parties involved, all right? That's 14 different attitudes, 14 different personalities that we had to cater to throughout this whole process. On top of that, we had to make sure that our buyer stayed on board for 10 months, all right? They had earnest money locked up in the deal. And so what we did for the buyer was send back some of their earnest money after about 4 or 5 months. And once we let them know that, hey, this could drag on for a lot longer than we expected to. So we refunded probably about $3,000 of their earnest money, leaving them with just about $1,000 tied up at title in the deal. They were happy with that. And they knew, just like we knew, if they backed out of the deal, it was not going to be a problem for us to find another buyer at the same price or even potentially higher. So they were happy to stay in the deal with us. But that is something, that was an ongoing communication. That was just another party to the transaction that we have to keep satisfied. When you find yourself in these type of transactions, it is all about communication and transparency. You want to make sure that everybody is up to date with everything that's going on. Any new information that comes in, you want to make sure you share with everybody, so not just one person is getting the side of the story, then going back and mixing the story up and and causing frustration and miscommunication. You have to make sure you are connecting with all the parties of this transaction to keep everybody happy and keep everybody on one page, and that includes the buyer. A lot of trust building exercises that went into working this transaction, but me and the seller, Miss Mary, this is her right here. We actually built a very close relationship. Miss Mary still texts me to this day, tells me that she loves me. She actually met my wife while she was pregnant, going through this process, and then we had the baby. So she got to see my wife pregnant. She got to meet the baby. I still send her pictures of the baby to this day. It's just a really heartfelt situation, man. And Miss Mary, I think, had about she had 3 or 4 strokes, something, very crazy, but she is still walking and talking normally. She's not in a wheelchair. She's not on a cane. She's in her right mind. She talks very well. So I think Miss Mary may be 89, but she's very blessed to still have her right mind and good health with all the things that she's been through. So, we talked through a lot of that through this transaction. So this is a very personal transaction for us and for the sellers. And I got a good friend out of Miss Mary. She's actually like my baby's grandmother. You know what I'm saying? Let her tell it. But she's a very sweet lady. Happy we were able to get this done for the family. The family is happy we were able to get this done. There were a lot of financial struggles going on with a lot of the heirs. So even though it was just a couple $1,000s, they were all very generous to receive the funds that they got from closing this deal. And for us, it's another one in the books, another problem solved, another client helped, and another deal done, and another 5-figure assignment fee, y'all. That's all I got for y'all today. If you haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to my channel so you can get deal breakdowns like this every single week, because I'm going to continue to bring these to y'all, because we're going to continue to close deals. If you in DFW, connect with me. Let's try and close a deal and make some money together, man. Until the next time, tap in.